Hey everybody, my name is Clay Maffett. I work with the Google Apps for Education team at our headquarters in Mountain View, California, and for the last 9 months or so I've been working on a specific product called Google Apps Vault. For those of you who aren't aware, Google Apps Vault is sort of our brand new message archiving and e-discovery solution. It's directly integrated with Google Apps, so previous archiving solutions for Google Apps have been sort of standalone products that you have to route mail through. Google Apps Vault is directly integrated. There's no mail routing or anything. As long as you are using Google Apps for Education for mail, all you have to do is kind of turn on the service. It's cheap. It's $10 per faculty and staff user per year. Any students who are on your Google Apps for Education system as well are archived for free. And if you don't pay in US dollars, which most of you probably don't, you kind of translate that $10 cost to whatever your local currency is. So without further ado, we'll go through a quick sort of presentation and a quick demo of what Vault looks like. And then if anybody has questions afterwards, since we don't have too much time right now, feel free to just come up and ask me whatever questions you have. I'll be around. So the whole Google Apps philosophy about working in the future is that you want to be able to work together. You want to be able to work wherever you are. So that's sort of the web, working in the cloud sort of philosophy. You also always want to be up to date. You don't want to deal with different versions of different products. You want to make sure that anytime you're accessing a system or accessing a service, that it's at its newest version. And that all kind of boils down to working through the web. You only want to work through a browser. That way you know that as long as you have internet access and a computer with a web browser, you can accomplish any of the work that you could anywhere else. So that's sort of the general philosophy behind Google Apps plus Vault for message archiving. Vault enables users to archive, manage, and preserve Gmail and on-the-record chats for information governments, e-discovery, and regulatory investigations, which is designed to reduce costs and risks for your organization. In the United States, schools, public institutions especially, are required, in order to be compliant, they're required to archive all of their electronic messaging. So this is sort of the tool that you can use in order to achieve that compliance. There are several components to this. There's archiving, which is just making sure that messages and on-the-record chats are securely managed in place, and there's no need to duplicate the data, but you're sure that the data that you need to have will be there and won't be removed for any reason. You also need to be able to define retention policies, which means if in order to be compliant, you need to retain mail for 4 years or 1 year or 7 years or 10 years. You need to be able to set those policies and be sure that anything that's younger than its retention policy is still available. Anything older than its retention policy will be removed for your system so that you're no longer liable for that information. And lastly, you need an e-discovery component, which is just being able to search among your mail archive in order to find the information that pertains to whatever investigation you might be under. And the e-discovery tools that are built into Google Apps Vault are powered by the same algorithms that we use for Google Search and Gmail Search. So any of those search functions that you're used to in the Google ecosystem, they apply to Google Apps Vault as well. So it's really, really easy to track down the messages that you need. The electronic discovery reference model, this might be something that some of you are familiar with. The traditional model is that first you need information management, and then second you need identification. So not only do you need to be able to manage information and know that it's in a certain location, you then have to be able to identify it and know which messages pertain to the investigation that you're under. And then lastly, you need preservation and collection, and these are sort of handled by Google Apps Vault as well. The preservation aspect involves retention policies and ensuring that messages won't be removed from your system. And then collection is just being able to use the e-discovery capabilities in order to get the subset of messages that you need, collect them into sort of an easy-to-digest package, and then beyond that, you can then send, after using Google Apps Vault, you can then send this collection of information to, legal authorities or whoever needs to investigate at that time. And that's when you have the processing, review, and analysis stage, and then production and presentation. And as I mentioned, Google Apps Vault sort of handles the first half of this, but it also streamlines the second half for whatever agencies or organizations are sort of trying to digest that information and then present it. Working in the past, I don't know if some of you might have dealt with, e-discovery and retention policies back in the 80s or before. But traditionally, you would just have big file cabinets, and you would try to sort of organize your file cabinets as much as possible, but having paper records is very difficult to manage, and is often just sort of a pain to kind of find what you're looking for. Working in the future, working with Google Apps Vault, everything is contained online. All of the information is stored in the cloud, so you kind of know that everything is stored in the cloud and that it's reliably accessible when you need it. Additionally, as technology has sort of come to the forefront of the way people manage information, there were some growing pains where the information might have been stored in various places, but you still needed to know where that information was. So if you had server racks that had certain mail data, and then you had people with personal computers or PDAs and things like that that also had information that you might be liable for, then you might have some paper documentation, people's personal computers at home, et cetera, et cetera. Before the sort of cloud model emerged, all that information would be stored locally in various locations. That's no longer a problem with Google Apps Vault. You have sort of a central repository of information, and all you have to do is access it through Google Apps Vault, and you don't have to worry about various disparate sources like in the past. Another thing, governance policies, which we were mentioning earlier, retention policies and things like that. Many organizations don't want any information past a certain age, because then you sort of get into a degree of complexity about how much information you're dealing with that it becomes almost impossible to sort of manage that information when the time comes that you have to collect it. So with governance policies in Google Apps Vault, you're keeping certain information safe up to a certain point, and then beyond that point it's removed if you would like it to be removed, and you can rest assured that anything beyond its retention policy will be removed from your system, and you don't have to worry about it being in there anymore. Lastly, search and e-discovery. It used to be really, really difficult to kind of go through all the various pathways that you needed to travel in order to find the information that you needed. Whether you needed to collect a person's personal laptop and search through the laptop, export mail, all those sorts of things, that's no longer necessary. Now all you have is a single sort of search box that you search within Google Apps Vault, and it searches your entire database. One of our earliest customers, kind of a trusted tester, was an actual law firm, because we wanted to kind of get our reviews from the mouths of the users who might be using it the most, which is the legal community. As a business need, they said that as litigation is often an inevitable aspect to running a business, or a school in our case, archiving and e-discovery capabilities are critical for organizations of all sizes to understand how both to integrate and execute within their line of business. And then as far as integration is concerned with Google Apps, or Google Apps for Education in particular, Google Apps Vault adds an important archiving and e-discovery capability to Google Apps, and is a natural complement to Google Apps, and allows a seamless integration path forward within the evolving platform. So it kind of falls into the general philosophy that we have with Google Apps, that as soon as when you sign up for the service today, you can rest assured that it will continue to improve over time. So we have plans with Google Apps Vault to add Drive and Docs archiving as well, but we won't raise the price or charge for those additional services. Once you sign up for Vault, you're always going to be paying the same price. The product will continue to get better and better, and it will continue to sort of facilitate the types of actions that you might need to perform within your Google Apps for Education system. So quickly, while we have a little time, I want to show you guys just sort of what Google Apps Vault looks like. Firstly, within the Google Apps control panel, if you want to add admin rights for people to be able to manage your Vault archive, what you do is you go into admin roles, and then I'll quickly show you the privileges section. And you have various options beneath the Google Apps Vault section for sort of granularly controlling who is able to do what within your Vault archive. So as you see, we have some user-created roles over here on the left. Something like a litigator, you wouldn't allow them to change, say, retention policies, or who administrators might be, et cetera. But in the case that a litigator needs access to a certain matter, which is a specific investigation, you need to allow them to export data, run a search, set a hold on a specific user so that no information that pertains to that user is removed, et cetera. You can control all of those various capabilities and user rights from within the Google Apps control panel. When you access Google Apps Vault by just going to ediscovery.google.com, as long as you're logged in as an administrator, you get to see the entire Vault archive. And this is kind of the view, the initial view. It looks very similar to what you're used to with Google Drive. You can see who the owner is, when you last accessed it, or when anyone last accessed it, and then the list of all of the different matters that you're dealing with. Quickly, I'll show you how you manage retention. You set a default retention period, which is up here at the top. In this case, it's 3,650 days, or 10 years. The retention period limit is actually unlimited. So if you would like to keep mail for 50 years, feel free to multiply 365 times 50 and put it in there. That's actually kind of different from the traditional archiving model that you might have worked with other companies, where you have a specific amount of time that they'll archive information. You don't have any storage or time quotas with Google Apps Vault. So, it's one price, but you can keep everything for as long as you want. Then you can set additional sort of retention limits based on certain rules that you can define. So if mail is to a certain user, or it has a certain label, or it was sent within a specific time period, you can set rules that limit the retention there to whatever limit you would like, and that sort of overrides the default rule that you've set. You can also set retention limits by organizational unit. So many schools set up a faculty organizational unit, an administration organizational unit, and a students OU, and you can sort of set a retention period just based on that organizational unit, which is something that schools use a lot in the United States, and we imagine that now that we have Vault available in Europe and beyond, they'll probably be using those same capabilities. So to quickly go into a matter, let's just go into this test matter that I've created. The first thing you see is being able to create holds on specific users. So I've put a hold on my own account, and then a hold on Kenneth Lay's account. He's somebody that was involved with the Enron scandal, so it's an example of someone that as soon as a matter or some sort of investigation begins, you want to make sure that any mail that might have been reaching its retention limit, you want those retention limits to be ignored. You want to keep all data that's available at that point in time, and that's why you put a retention hold on a user. You can then go into the search section. As I mentioned before, it's very similar to what you work with under Gmail or just Google search in general. You can search all data, just the held data, or unprocessed data, which is going kind of into the HTML of an HTML formatted messages, things like that. Then you can search terms, specific accounts. You get the autocomplete, so whenever you're typing in an account, whether it's on for a hold or for a search, you get to search through groups or any specific users, and you get that autocomplete database, which is really convenient. Then you can also do the sent, earliest date and latest date, and then you get to and from, and then you have various options for search, whether you just want to count the results to kind of hone in, like, oh, we started out with 500 specific messages for this search. We want to narrow that down to 50. You can just do a count, which makes things a little bit faster rather than searching through all the actual data. And then to quickly show you an example of an example search that I've run. As you can see, here's the query that's coming up here. I searched for the term cash, so I'm looking for people who are talking about cash. And I wanted to exclude a user named Michelle Cash because she's coming up for every single message that she's ever sent. So I can exclude her. I could also say exclude her as the sender, but you can include if she actually included the word cash in one of her messages. So you can kind of hone it in if you want. And then I also restricted the dates that it was sent, sort of June 2011 to June 2012. There we go. So as you see, we've got 14 messages. It's searching throughout my entire system. And we've just got 14 messages. I can see the owner of the message, which is who sent the message. In this case, we have 3 different users, Mary, David, and Greg. So when I run an export, I had a sample export from yesterday, and it would take longer than we have to run an export right now. But basically, you get export data for each specific user in a .mbox format, which is similar to like a PST format. It's just a generally acceptable mail format that is acceptable, whether you're searching internally or sending it off to a law firm or a litigator. They can kind of digest that inbox format. And then you also get sort of an integrity report, which makes sure that the data exported properly and you've got everything there in your export. Lastly, the last component is you actually want to be able to audit the use of Google Apps Vault. So if you feel like someone might have exported information that shouldn't have, or someone changed a retention policy for a specific user that they shouldn't have, you can actually search among the activity within Google Apps Vault to figure out who's done what within your system recently. So that's sort of an additional insurance policy to kind of assure people that everything that's within your Google Apps Vault system is as it should be, and nobody's sort of been tampering with it. Lastly, if you want to share a matter, you can just click the share link. It's similar to how you share things in Google Drive. You can share it with whatever users, and as long as they have the administrative rights that allow them to access the matter, you can just share the investigation with them. So if you spend all this time pulling up all these specific messages, putting people on hold, et cetera, for a specific investigation, you can just share that investigation or matter with someone, and they can jump right in and pick up where you left off and help you out. So that's sort of the collaborative nature. That's all the time we have for now, but once again, I'll be around if you have any questions. And again, Google Apps Vault, we just figured out all the legal paperwork and everything for Europe and beyond, so we're looking forward to kind of onboarding people. And yeah, it's a great product, and we hope everybody enjoys using it. Thanks a lot.